clearances. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with its locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
In our headlines on this Friday, June 26th, here in South Korea. In Venezuela, the search for survivors continue. As authorities say, well over 200 people have been killed and more than 4,000 injured from the two deadly earthquakes that struck the capital area. Meanwhile, a cargo ship transiting the Strait of Hormuz on a UN-approved route is hit by a projectile, challenging efforts to restore shipping traffic through the crucial waterway. Here in South Korea, the Finance Ministry announces intentions to ease the cap on fuel prices to reflect the global retreat in oil prices and to ease inflationary pressure. Venezuela is reeling in the aftermath of two deadly earthquakes that have taken hundreds of lives, injured thousands of others, and left rescuers frantically digging through the rubble for survivors. Our Park Chun-han has the latest.
The search for survivors continues in Venezuela following the two earthquakes measured at magnitudes 7.2 and 7.5 on Wednesday. The official death toll has climbed to at least 235.
As for what matters most, which is human life and human health, up to this moment, regrettably, we must report that 188 Venezuelan men and women have died as a result of the earthquake. 1,520 people have been admitted to hospitals with injuries and are currently receiving treatment, and 157 people have been reported missing.
The coastal state of La Guaira, home to major international ports, took the heaviest blow with about 40 high-rise buildings reduced to rubble. Nationwide, at least 250 structures were destroyed, including 8 hospitals and dozens of public facilities. Rescuers initially spent the night digging through concrete with bare hands, shovels, and wheelbarrows due to a lack of heavy equipment. However, relief operations are now gaining momentum as government mobilized heavy machinery arrives. Acting President Delcy Rodriguez also met with the Army's General Staff to coordinate urgent relief in La Guaira. Meanwhile, help is also pouring in from the international community. The United States has pledged to deploy a regional disaster assistance response team and provide at least $150 million in assistance through partners, including the International Medical Corps and the World Food Program. It has also committed $100 million to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs Venezuela Pooled Fund. The European Union is coordinating a massive effort, with countries like Spain, Italy, France, and Germany sending search and rescue teams. Neighboring Colombia is dispatching a 64-member delegation with a specialized search dog team, while Mexico and the World Health Organization are sending medical support. As aftershocks continue, thousands of displaced residents remain on the streets, unable to return home. Park Chun-han, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, sea traffic in the Strait of Hormuz has been rendered uncertain after an attack on a cargo vessel that was moving on a United Nations-approved route. Our Lee Jae covers the assault.
The United Nations International Maritime Organization has suspended plans to evacuate more than 11,000 sailors stranded in the Strait of Hormuz after a cargo ship was attacked, raising new concerns about security in one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. IMO Secretary General Arsenio Dominguez said several vessels had already been evacuated, but the operation has now been put on hold until authorities can ensure adequate safety guarantees for cruise and commercial ships. The latest incident occurred on Thursday when the UK Maritime Trade Operations Agency reported that a cargo ship was struck by an unknown projectile about 7.5 nautical miles southeast of Oman's port of Dahit. A U.S. official confirmed the attack and told CBS News that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was behind it. No injuries were reported, and maritime security firm Vanguard said the Singapore-flagged Ever Lovely was able to continue through the Strait of Hormuz. The incident comes just days after the United States and Iran reached a 14-point agreement aimed at ending hostilities. As part of the deal, Iran agreed to make its best efforts to ensure the safe passage of commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz for the next 60 days. However, disagreements remain. Tehran says it plans to charge what it calls maritime service fees for ships using the waterway, while the United States argues that no country has the authority to impose charges on an international shipping route. Iran has also warned that all vessels must travel only through routes designated by Tehran. Authorities said ships using unauthorized routes would not be guaranteed safe passage or insurance coverage, and any resulting damage would be the responsibility of the ship's owner and operator. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps echoed that warning, saying safe navigation is only possible through approved routes. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most vital maritime choke points, with roughly 1/5 of global oil supplies passing through it under normal conditions. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the transit of South Korean ships continues across the Strait of Hormuz. According to the Oceans Ministry on this Friday, 8 vessels previously trapped in the Persian Gulf have managed to transit the area with a total of 37 South Korean sailors on board. Now, given this latest development, the number of Korean ships stranded in the region has been brought down to 5, including the HMM Namu, which is under repair in Dubai following a drone assault back in May. Taking to his social media platform, President Lee Jae-myung revealed that 3 more ships would pass through the critical waterway over the weekend. He also praised the efforts of Korean officials in ensuring a prompt transit operation. Also here in South Korea, the government will ease its cap on fuel prices in line with efforts to ease inflationary pressure and to reflect the global retreat in oil prices. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
The Korean government is lowering the maximum fuel price ceiling that has been in place to ease the impact of soaring energy costs. Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and Economy Ko Yoon-chun confirmed the downward revision during an emergency economic meeting on Friday morning.
The 7th maximum fuel price cap will be lowered from the current level, taking into comprehensive consideration the fall in global oil prices, the financial burden on the public, and fiscal conditions. It will be maintained until consumer oil prices stabilize.
Major international crude benchmarks have recently fallen to the $60 to $70 range per barrel, effectively returning to levels seen before the outbreak of the war in the Middle East. However, the average price of gasoline and diesel at domestic gas stations has remained high, hovering around 2,001 per liter for a 3rd consecutive month. The government determined that alongside the usual distribution time lag, the current maximum price caps fixed for nearly 3 months at 1,934 won for gasoline, 1,923 won for diesel, and 1,530 won for kerosene have paradoxically acted as a price floor, restricting downward movement at the pumps. The government stressed the necessity of preemptive inflation control, noting that high prices remain a persistent issue despite easing external uncertainties.
While uncertainties remain in the follow-up negotiation process, the burden on the public continues due to high inflation, high exchange rates, high interest rates, and slowing employment.
In addition to the fuel price measures, the government plans to inject 1 trillion won, around $653.6 million to stabilize consumer prices, expanding discount programs for agricultural, livestock, and fishery products. The exact margin of the price ceiling cut will be announced at 7 p.m. on Friday night. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the local bourse, a circuit breaker for the benchmark KOSPI was activated on this Friday as stocks surrendered more than 8% on session. The halt at around noon marked the 5th of its kind this year and came after a sell-side sidecar in the morning. At closing bell, the benchmark KOSPI was down over 5% at 8,411.2. Meanwhile, the South Korean currency weakened further against the US dollar, hitting close to 1,550 won, which is the highest since the global financial crisis in 2009. President Jae Myung has pledged tangible support to foster next-generation defense technology firms. Chairing a strategy meeting at the Blue House on this Friday, he highlighted the essential role of cutting-edge technology in advancing national security. That being said, he called for the building of companies here capable of competing with the US's Palantir and Germany's Helsing. Accordingly, Korea is expected to streamline its defense procurement and set up a government-funded venture capital fund to invest in promising startups. A second day of confirmation hearing on this Friday for Prime Minister nominee Han Sang-suk turned into a war of words between ruling and opposition lawmakers over past property transactions. The People Power Party questioned the sale and rental of one of Han's office units, alleging unfair treatment, while the Democratic Party dismissed the question as politically motivated. Han, for her part, denied any wrongdoing. The questions framing this year's Jeju Forum are focused on two main tasks: promoting partnerships and promoting peace despite deep divisions. Our Moon Hye-ryun files this report.
As conflicts reshape the international landscape, this year's Jeju Forum has turned its focus to one question: how can peace be sustained in an increasingly fragmented world? That question framed two of the forum's central discussions, one examining the future of the international order, the other exploring prospects for Middle East peace in the wake of conflict. In a session bringing together former foreign ministers from across the Asia-Pacific, speakers debated whether the world is entering a fundamentally new era of disorder, with many warning against treating instability as inevitable. Former Australian Foreign Minister Gareth Evans argued that smaller, flexible coalitions of mid-sized nations still have the power to push back.
There is a real capacity for the world's middle powers, and all of us really represent them, to step up and make a difference through creative and cohesive multilateral and minilateral coalition building.
That debate carried particular resonance on the Korean peninsula. Several speakers identified Northeast Asia as a critical test of the non-proliferation regime, warning that nuclear armament by either Korea or Japan could trigger a wider chain reaction across the region and beyond. A parallel session turned the lens on the Middle East, where experts described a region facing profound uncertainty: a fragile ceasefire, unresolved political disputes, and Iran's assertion of control over the Strait of Hormuz, disrupting global shipping. For South Korea, an energy-dependent economy, the reverberations have been acute. Lee Kyung-cho, Seoul's newly appointed Special Representative for Middle East Peace, addressed the session directly.
I would like to reaffirm the Korean government's consistent support for the two-state solution, which remains the only viable option to seek to achieve with the full support of the international community towards a lasting peace in the region.
He also highlighted the SHINE initiative, unveiled during a presidential visit to Egypt last November, as Korea's broader vision for engagement with the region. Together, the two sessions reflected the central challenge confronting governments worldwide, sustaining cooperation in an era of growing division, and the role middle powers like South Korea may play in meeting it. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News, Jeju.
And on the sidelines of that annual forum, the UN's top nuclear official spoke to Arirang News about his thoughts regarding future UN nuclear inspections in Iran and North Korea's efforts to expand its nuclear arsenal. Our Kim Bo-kyung has details.
The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, called the MOU between the U.S. and Iran relatively succinct, but said the talks are still needed on the details of how the nuclear activities will be supervised, monitored, and verified by the IAEA. This during his interview with Arirang News on Thursday.
This means that we have an agreement on the principle, which is very important, but we now have to go into the technical discussions to determine where and when we start with the actual inspection.
There is no imminent activity starting there yet, but as there is commitment between the two leaders, Grossi said the IAEA will definitely do its role by being present throughout the process of inspections. When it comes to North Korea's nuclear activities, Grossi said the regime is showing a concerning trend, as Pyongyang unfortunately does not seem to stop these activities despite the numerous UN Security Council resolutions. The IAEA was expelled in 2009 from North Korea, but has been reporting on its nuclear activities in great detail. Through photos of Kim Jong-un inspecting a newly commissioned nuclear material production plant, the IAEA was able to confirm that there is a new uranium enrichment facility at the Yongbyon nuclear complex.
What we see is a stable trend of increase in the production of fissile material for the development of nuclear weapons. We also see activity around the reprocessing units there, which are used to extract plutonium for further manufacture of nuclear devices.
He underlined how the agency will continue to keep an eye on the regime's nuclear development. Meanwhile, as one of the candidates for the next UN Secretary General, Grossi pledged to play a more active role visiting areas where further assessment is needed, as demonstrated by his trip to waters off the coast of Fukushima in Japan. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Speaking about the candidates hoping to head the UN starting 2027, our Oh Soo-young sat down exclusively that is, with Rebecca Grynspan, who currently heads the UN's Trade and Development Agency and hopes to use her experience there to enhance the broader operations of the UN.
The United Nations must return to the head of the table of multilateral cooperation, as an increasingly multipolar world risks deeper fragmentation. That's according to Rebecca Grynspan, Secretary General of the UN Conference on Trade and Development, as she seeks to become the next UN Secretary General. In an interview with Arirang News at the Jeju Forum, Grynspan called for the need to restore the UN's relevance by bringing it back to the centre of global diplomacy.
And I have been traveling a lot and talking to a lot of people. What you find is that people ask you, where is the UN? So back at the table, peace and security obviously as a priority of the UN, together with development and human rights. But we need to strengthen mediation, active diplomacy and preventive diplomacy within the UN.
Of course, the UN Charter was created in a very different era than the one we are in now. And, well, how would the UN then tackle emerging challenges such as artificial intelligence, cyber threats and, disinformation, also the growing role of non-state actors, also while keeping to its founding principles?
First of all, these are not only challenges but also opportunities, and we need to make sure that the opportunities go everywhere. And in terms of AI and the digital transformation, for example, we have to close the gaps. We have to build the capacities in the countries, and we have to make the opportunities get to everybody everywhere. And we have to really help on the diffusion of technology so everybody can prosper at the same pace. On the challenges part, I think that we have to cooperate. And here we need to bring academia, we need to bring the scientific community. We cannot tackle what we don't understand. And so we need to bring the actors that are on the frontier of knowledge and technology to the UN so we can have AI and the digital transformation.
How do you see the role of the Republic of Korea in bridging divides and reinforcing multilateralism in this fragmenting world?
Korea has become from being a recipient country of aid to be a donor and to really pay back, in a way, all the help and support that you have received in the past. And you have acted responsibly and with a lot of solidarity with respect to the rest of the world. And the themes that Korea has chosen, the digital transformation, AI as examples, obviously trade, critical minerals, are the center of the discussion today. So kudos to Korea, and really we count on these voices to be able to strengthen multilateralism.
Looking ahead, Grynspan hopes to lead a more inclusive and pragmatic UN that expands partnerships with private actors and civil society. Her measure of success for the next decade, to no longer hear the question, where is the UN? 오수영, Arirang News, Jeju.
In other news now, Seoul's annual book fair is underway this week, and on its opening day, a record number of bookworms, if you will, turned up, reflecting the renewed interest here in reading. Our culture correspondent Chung Hae-rim files this report.
Long lines stretch across the COEX on Wednesday morning as visitors waited to enter the Seoul International Book Fair. Even before the doors opened, excitement had already been building online, with early bird tickets selling out and some ticket packages drawing heavy demand.
I thought there wouldn't be that many people since it's the first day and a weekday, but I came for the open run at 8 a.m. and there were about 70 people in front of me. I'm here for author Choi Eun-young's signing event. This is her book, and the special edition cover is only available here.
This year's theme is Homo Duduri, or the questioning human, reflecting on what reading means in the age of artificial intelligence. Beyond traditional publisher booths, the fair features interactive programs, special merchandise, author events, and exhibitions designed to turn reading into a more immersive experience. This reflects the growing text tip trend where the younger generation invest in reading, collecting books, and sharing literary tastes, and that is considered trendy and unique.
I was surprised to see that there are more people who like books than I expected. I came just to look around and enjoy the vibe. I like reading because it gives me time to fully focus without getting distracted by anything else.
This is the booth of Minamsa, one of Korea's best-known publishers, famous for its world literature collection. And as you can see behind me, the line just to buy a book just keeps going, proving the so-called text tip trend.
Recently, many people seem to be looking for novels. In everyday life, people don't really have many chances to think about books. But through events like this, they can rediscover the joy of reading. I hope people continue visiting bookstores even after the book fair ends.
Artificial intelligence offers answers faster than ever, and this year's book fair asks a different question: what it means to think, imagine, and ask questions as humans. And judging by the crowds, many readers are still eager to find those answers between the pages. Chung Hae-rim, Arirang News.
Up next, we share with you the sounds of kugak music with a modern twist by young artists in an annual competition that seeks to hit all the right notes to keep Korea's traditional tunes pitch perfect. Our Park Gun-woo reports.
Violin sounds alongside traditional Korean instruments like the kayagum and ajeng. Modern electronic beats layered over centuries-old Korean melodies. They're just some of the ways a new generation of musicians is reinventing kugak, a traditional Korean performing art made up of music, song, dance, and ceremonial movements. A total of 10 teams competed in Thursday evening's final of the 2026 edition of the annual 21st Century Korean Music Project, organized by the Culture Ministry. Participants say their goal is to make kugak more accessible to a wider audience.
We're trying to make kugak more approachable by weaving traditional folk melodies into easy listening music. If we have the chance to perform on the global stage, we'd like listeners around the world to discover Korean folk music in a fun and accessible way.
Every finalist went home with an award and prize money, giving them resources to keep pushing the boundaries of kugak. To mark the competition's 20th anniversary, the top prize was upgraded from the Prime Minister's Award to the Presidential Award, carrying prize money of 50 million won, or roughly $9,700. And that went to Keoju Band, whose performance combined electric guitars and drums with kugak, while their outfits blended modern fashion with traditional hanbok.
We're planning to use the prize money to broaden the sonic range of traditional Korean instruments. We'll also experiment with ways for instruments like the janggu to produce tones similar to Western percussion.
Organizers say the competition, which has been run for 2 decades, will continue encouraging innovation while preserving the essence of kugak.
What's important isn't simply preserving tradition, but reinterpreting it while staying true to kugak's musical language. Over the past 20 years, the project has empowered young artists to build their own musical identity. We'll continue creating opportunities for emerging musicians while making kugak more accessible to the public.
20 years on, the project continues to nurture emerging kugak talent and expand the global reach of Korean traditional music. And as a new generation takes center stage, expectations are already building on for what the next 20 years will bring. 박건우, Arirang News.
Summer-like heat returned to western regions today, while showers move through the east. Starting today, daytime temperatures will climb again. The summer heat will stick around through the weekend, with highs reaching 32 degrees Celsius on both Saturday and Sunday. The good news is that we'll enjoy plenty of sunshine tomorrow. Meanwhile, UV levels will be very high between noon and 3 p.m. Ozone levels are forecast to reach bad levels in some central areas, including Seoul and parts of Jeollado provinces. So during the hottest part of the day, it's best to cut back on outdoor activities if you can. As for temperatures, Seoul will start the day at 20 degrees Celsius, with Daejeon and Busan both at 18 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 32 degrees, Chuncheon 30, Gwangju 31 degrees. Looking ahead, rain is forecast for Jeju Island on Wednesday and is expected to gradually spread into southern regions afterward. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
That brings us to the end of this week's editions of the Daily Report. Coming up next is our daily discussion with members of the foreign media.
He bursts into laughter upon unexpectedly discovering an incense burner on a street in Insadong. What made him laugh was none other than a replica of the Celadon incense burner with openwork geometric design, often hailed as the pinnacle of Goryeo Celadon. Its clear, luminous jade green glaze, and even the 3 adorable rabbits supporting the burner. At first glance, it seems quite convincing, but it cannot escape his keen eye. Perhaps, unable to support the burner, the rabbits in the replica are oversized and clumsy. In reality, the rabbits on the authentic piece are as small as the joints of an adult's finger. They have borne the weight of layered lotus petals and an openwork lid for over 1,000 years. This incense burner is also considered a masterpiece that showcases the refined and exceptional craftsmanship of the Goryeo dynasty. Each delicate petal was individually shaped and attached, and the precise openwork technique carved to allow incense smoke to rise like drifting clouds, stands as clear evidence. Above all, it embodies a remarkable sense of balance that is difficult to perfectly recreate even with modern techniques. It is, in essence, a complete convergence of the decorative techniques of its time. It can be imitated, but never truly matched, the unwavering dedication of Korea artisans. The laughter in Insadong may well have been the most honest expression of awe for the extraordinary artistic spirit of our ancestors, so far ahead of their time.
Today, we touch upon Team Korea's fate at the 2026 FIFA World Cup before delving into public transit fare subsidies for seniors here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective. It's Friday, June 26th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. It's time for our weekly talk about the stories related to South Korea making social headlines. For more on this, I have independent journalist Kelly Kasulis-Cho here in the studio. Kelly, it's great to have you here.
Happy to be here as always. Thanks.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with us. Colin, welcome back.
Glad to be back once again.
Right, Kelly, let's start with a recap of Team Korea's match against South Africa and the prospects ahead.
Yes, full disclaimer, I am not a sports person, so I can't say that I've been watching the World Cup too much beyond like some of the fun cultural phenomenons that have come out of it. But my understanding is that South Africa won in the last match against South Korea 1-0. And now it's a question of whether or not South Korea will continue in the competition. I read some sports analyses that suggested that there's a high probability that Korea will compete again and that we'll know in a day or two on the 28th. But for me, what's been interesting about this is kind of seeing The elation that's been going on in Korea, it's been a really fun time to be here and absorb the atmosphere, be it like sports bars, seeing people interact and enjoy the games, and also kind of the cultural exchange that we see going on. Unlike the 2002 World Cup, right, that Koreans remember, we're experiencing this in an era of TikTok and Instagram Reels. So like, for instance, if you're not in the US, you're still in a way experiencing some cultural exchange there. So as an American, there's been a lot of camaraderie built between Japan and Texans, for example, that has been really funny, and I've really felt that, and you see that with South Korea and Mexico as well. So to the point about this game, I saw a lot of that elation kind of drop off the cliff this week with that loss. I don't have much stake in football, soccer, sports, but it's been interesting to kind of see like a national mood take up this country and see it actually not just on the internet and in these like parasocial relationships, but on the street. Like, it's been a long time since I've really felt a news event here, like in my day-to-day life on the street, like people reacting. I think the last time that I felt this way was maybe the 2018 Pyeongchang Olympics, or the martial law declaration, right? But even that felt less powerful and less ubiquitous. I feel like I can't escape the World Cup right now. And so even though I did not watch the game, I knew South Africa beat South Korea, because you could see it on people's faces just on the bus and going around town, which I love, actually.
There was a lot of disappointment here, especially at the public watch party in Gwanghwamun Square. Colin, what were your takeaways from the match?
Well, there is one memory, I think, that will stick with me for years to come. I caught glimpses of the match yesterday while I was getting ready at home, then stepped out and was walking down the street to where I was going, and I passed a fried chicken place, and it was packed in the morning, and suddenly, as I'm passing, I hear this collective shout, groan from all these, maybe 50 people inside this chicken place, and I knew, well, the game isn't going well. It was already 0-1 in South Africa's favor when I left home, and I thought, well, I guess they're not going to turn it around, even though I wasn't watching. But you can tell, as Kelly mentioned, from people's reactions, and that was a particularly strong one. But another image that will stay with me as a representative, I saw on social media this morning, and it was a photo of a 편의점, a convenience store door, that said 홍명보 출입 금지, which is 홍명보 is forbidden to enter. Him being the coach of the South Korean team. And I take away as well that I would not want that job under any circumstances, to be the coach of the South Korean team in the World Cup, because no matter how well they do, any faults or losses will be put on you. And this is characteristic of South Korean political culture in a lot of ways. Whatever goes wrong is the fault of who's ever at the head of things or seen to be the head of things. And he may be. His explanations for his choice to, for example, not bring out Son Heung-min early on was plausible, but not that a bit flimsy as well, and scrutiny will be going on for years about what exactly went into his decisions and why the level of play had dropped so much. But I will say I'm glad I don't have his job, and I will also take away that this is, again, this is a situation where someone is always the lightning rod when things go sideways in Korea, and that is, we know who that lightning rod is.
All right. Meanwhile, Kelly, moving ahead, one day ahead of Team Korea's match against South Africa, Capital Seoul obtained the legal basis for bus fare subsidies for those aged 70 and above. Could you tell us a bit more about this development, its implications, and the public response?
Yeah, so the proposal at play right now is basically to either subsidize or make free the Seoul metropolitan bus system for people who are 70 and up. Currently, the subway is, I believe, free for those who are 65 and up. So I'm actually surprised that the bus system hasn't already been a part of this. And I've also been kind of surprised by the response. There's been a little bit of a negative reaction over this. People seem concerned with rising costs of maintaining these systems if we continue to subsidize or expand, I guess, free ridership for senior citizens. I think there's a few things to consider here. So over the years, I've written about Korea's transportation system compared to, say, Japan or the United States. And one thing I learned in that process is that One of the factors you have to look at is what percentage of the maintenance or the cost of operating a subway or bus system is actually funded by passenger fares, right? So if you look at South Korea, the bus system is about 60 to 70%, according to estimates, funded by people's literal fares, paying for the system. That's actually incredibly high compared to a lot of parts of the world. So just as an example, the New York subway, the New York bus system, incredibly dense, right? We're talking about 8 to 10 million people in that city. About 20 to 25% of their system is actually funded by passenger fares. So the government and these like private entities are largely the ones who bear the cost burden there. In Korea, that's not the case. People are riding public transit so much that it almost completely pays for itself. And actually, some estimates with some of the fare changes, like the bus system has, the fare has been increasing slowly over the years. Estimates suggest that it actually could be 75 to 80% that will be paid by passenger fares. So I guess when you're looking at a society where the population is aging and there's a certain burden being incurred by that, I wonder why we're talking about drawing the line on subsidizing a public transit system. I mean, we don't want more cars on the roads here. We certainly don't want older people driving in their twilight years. We don't need more fine dust and pollution being, put out into the air. And so why is it that this is where some people are drawing the line? Also, we're talking about a society where about half of the elderly are considered under the poverty line. It just seems like an odd thing to be talking about. I know that, the healthcare system, the cost of maintaining cities, all of these are major concerns as the population ages and there isn't enough of a labor force to subsidize the elderly. This just seems like a weird place to put this flag in terms of societal concerns about how we're going to pay for this. But that's just my opinion.
Right, and keeping that in mind then, Colin, how do you respond to concerns over the long-term feasibility of these transit fare subsidies, especially keeping in mind that Seoul is a graying city?
Yes, following up on what Kelly said, it is, I think, an issue that is a considerable issue, but also maybe a representation of something larger or larger anxieties. We have, as Kelly said, a subway system that is free for the elderly to ride. And that's been in place, I think, more than 20 years, that policy. And in that time has become a political third rail. No politician wants to touch the free subway rides for seniors, but all knowing that one day they're going to have to touch it. So just waiting to see who's the first to get zapped, I think, is what's going on there. But this could happen to other policies that are subsidies for the elderly or that are making certain services free, even if they're not bad policies in and of themselves. I think some people do get worried that, like, okay, the country is getting older and older on average, as you say. What's to stop the larger and larger proportion of the elderly from just voting themselves more and more things? There is a lot of discourse in the US where I'm from, where we're both from, about the economic advantages that older people, the older generations, have received or arrogated to themselves. And I think we've really only seen the beginning there of what people can do when you have a sort of generational class consciousness, and when it's time to really start voting themselves the benefits. We'll see what happens there. But in Korea, I think with the elderly getting more and more political power through sheer numbers, that's what causes a bit of trepidation. And as Kelly said, this is subsidizing bus rides and subway rides is not a bad thing in and of itself, but I think people do sense a slippery slope, for better or for worse, and the sense of can we manage not just the demographic change, but the political shifts in power that come with that. I think that's underlying all of this.
Right, and with regard to Korea's demographic portrait, findings for the month of April, Kelly, show a remarkable surge in the number of newborns. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Well, not to temper the excitement, it is a remarkable surge when you think about a 17% increase in newborns year on year. but we're actually talking about 3,000 babies worth of a difference in a country of 50 million people. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's not that remarkable. I think part of the reason why so much attention is being paid to this is because it's been a really pessimistic narrative for a very, very long time about South Korea's birth rate and its decline. South Korea no longer has the lowest birth rate in the world. It has one of the lowest, so that's, I guess, an improvement. We don't really know what exactly is at play. So what we have seen is that more marriages have happened after the pandemic sort of wrapped up here, because a lot of them were put on hold. In Korea specifically, child rearing is almost synonymous with getting married, so people usually don't do those things if they're not together. And so there might have been a delay in marriages because of the pandemic, and now we're seeing a surge of them, and therefore a surge of the number of people who are also having children. It's certainly an improvement, right? I don't know if the government subsidies and benefits, in fact, I think Cullen, being a recent father, could speak to this more, are really enough to move the needle to change someone's mind from not having kids to having kids, right? The government support is certainly great. I just don't know if it's enough to change anyone's mind. The last time we did a story on this a couple of years ago, parents were really grateful for the help that they were getting, but right, it wasn't enough to make a difference between being a parent and not being a parent. It maybe made the decision a little bit easier, but those people were probably planning to have kids anyway. So whenever we see these headlines, I would just caution to not get too excited about month-to-month or year-on-year improvements. I think if we see this kind of sustained improvement over the course of, say, 5+ years, that's pretty exciting. Just to give an example, I mean, I think at its lowest, the birth rate was about 0.71 newborns per, a woman that was capable of having children, or female capable of having children. I think it's like more around 0.79 or 0.81 now. So we're talking about a nominal improvement. And if Korea wants to replenish its population in a way that isn't worrisome, where people are not getting up in arms about subsidizing the elderly's bus fare, then we really need about 2.1 newborns for every female that is able to reproduce. So we're still quite a ways away.
Right. But for now, Korea's shift in trend with regard to its birth rate has been covered by the foreign media, including Canada's CBC News. Now, it titled the article, "South Korea's Unusual Approach to Boosting Its Birth Rate." For the sake of our viewers who may not be familiar with some of the measures that Kelly also alluded to, could you tell us about the measures that are in place here in the country, and would they work elsewhere?
Yes, this was a CBC News segment on TV and shot mostly in the city of Daegu, incidentally, which does have free bus fares for the elderly. I believe they have that policy, but also they have a variety of programs in place to encourage reproduction. One of them, the one this segment focused on, was a speed dating service marshaled by the city itself. And so they brought out this couple who had got together based on meeting through this service. And of course, they rattled down the usual list of the money given out, the financial support, especially highlighting IVF. I didn't know. Apparently, you can get 25 rounds of IVF paid for per child, which is, I mean, if it's going to work for you, it's going to work within 25 rounds. But also at different levels, be it the country or the city. Also, companies have certain policies in place to incentivize marriage, not just child rearing, but marriage itself. But of course, as Kelly alluded to, there were also couples brought out with these similar, not necessarily complaints, but concerns that, yes, the money's nice, but it's not enough. Maybe there could be more acceptance of maternity leave, although some of this points to the problem of one salary not being enough to raise a family on. I mean, there's a problem causing that to be the case, and it's a much harder problem to deal with. But as you say, this was CBC, and Canada is also, like most developed countries, coming up against its own demographic problems. The birth rate is at its lowest ever, as this segment said, but Canada is also a high immigration country, to put it mildly, and they haven't had to think as much about this because of that. But, you know, if any country is going to show what problems can arise because of a high immigration policy, Canada will do that, much like if any country is going to show what low immigration can cause, it'll be South Korea. So I think there are some, not necessarily parallels, but lessons one country can have for the other in that regard, unlikely though it may seem.
Right. Meanwhile, Kali, we have time for one more story before we end today. Back on Monday this week, Starbucks stores here in South Korea closed doors at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for a history lecture. Do tell us why.
Well, for those who don't know the history, the two dominating narratives that came out of Korean history in the 80s was the society economically transformed. That was really the flipping point from a country that struggled with post-war poverty to a country that's a major manufacturer and player. The other is Korea's struggle for democracy and the fight against authoritarianism. So the Gwangju Uprising, also known as the Gwangju Massacre, was a day in the 80s where military forces clashed with civilians. It was almost like a mini war or a mini battle. 165 civilians were killed. There are a lot of great films about this if you want to see a dramatization of that, maybe Peppermint Candy for those who are interested in Korean films. But anyway, so I think this history is actually well understood here. And what happened was, to mark, I guess, that anniversary, Starbucks did this reusable cup promotion, and they used the phrase Tank Day. And it really didn't go over well. It was seen as making light of a really horrible and tragic moment that is a recent part of Korean history. I mean, I myself have gone down to Gwangju on the anniversary of the massacre and have seen the families of these people who were slain still crying over their loved ones' graves. Okay, so this is very fresh. The martial law declaration also kind of brought back some of these pains. And I was there that night at the National Assembly when former President Yoon tried to use kind of a military dictatorship-era law to wrestle control of the country. And there were a lot of young people that ran down there in the middle of the night because they remembered this history and they wanted to see this through and stand up against that. So I don't think the average Korean person doesn't know about this. What I think happened was there was kind of a tone-deaf mistake made at the very highest levels of Starbucks corporate offices. They fired the chairman, the executive chairman, the same day that this happened. And the company has suffered such damage to its reputation that it's now trying to save face and virtue signal by making all of its baristas and its corporate employees go to a 3-hour training, right? So I don't, this is just my opinion. I don't know if the people that had to go to that training are the people that are truly responsible for this poor signaling, but I do think it's unfortunately something that they're going to have to suffer through for the sake of trying to save face and improve the brand. And here in South Korea, it has had a major impact. There have been reports of sales dropping significantly in the aftermath of this, people smashing their Starbucks cups. And for anyone who's from the United States, I know that Starbucks is a Seattle company, but actually South Korea has the most Starbucks per capita in the world. So Starbucks is in many ways a Korean company, right? So this was a very unfortunate mistake.
Right. Colin, the public response to this latest effort by Starbucks Korea, it was mixed. Could you very briefly tell us about it?
Yes, there's no underestimating Starbucks as an institution here in Korea. But if you read between the lines of many of these stories, they reveal that many ordinary Starbucks consumers here in Korea were not very well aware of what had happened in this, with this whole promotion and its reaction. And in a lot of ways, this has been playing out among higher profile political actors. And I think none of them have come out looking good out of this incident. I mean, it is not, this campaign was not tasteful, of course. It is also not tasteful to use it as an opportunity to score political points against your opponents. And, it's also not very tasteful to have the police investigating a company under suspicion of insulting the revolution. South Korea has long aspired to join a league of modern democracies, and that's not the kind of thing that happens in those countries. And so I think this might be an occasion for self-reflection, but not the kind of self-reflection that's actually been going on.
Right, I take the idea for self-reflection then. All right, Colin, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Kelly, thank you very much for your insights.
Thanks for having me.
That is all the time we have for this week then. Have a great weekend. See you back here, same time next Monday.